I'm going to run through an example Play Framework application based on a data model which uses one-to-many mapping. You can get the finished application from the GitHub repository here. I'll start by demoing the application. You can see it looks like the previous one from the last tutorial, and it shows a list of products on the products page. This time, however, we also have a list of categories. The default is to show all categories or products from all categories. That's at the very top. It also has the other categories underneath. And if you click on each one, it shows just the products for that category. Now, if we look at how the application is organized, or how the data model is organized, we have a one-to-many relationship between category and product. Category contains a list of many products. That allows us to retrieve products from the category by calling, if you have a category instance called category, you can call category.getProducts, and that will retrieve a list of products for that category. So for example, furniture, you could call furniture.getProducts, and it will return all the furniture from your database, or any other category the same way. Product also includes a category instance, and that's the reverse of the one-to-many. So we have a many-to-one relationship from product back to category, which is different from the usual database model that you might be familiar with. That allows us to call product.getCategory, and we can find the category for that product. Ebean maps that data model to a database. So database tables will be created from these classes, and that will implement the usual one-to-many only relationship between database tables using a foreign key in product. Now I've loaded the application up in Visual Studio Code. We'll start by looking at the model. We have two classes this time. We have the product from before, and also the new class category. Start with category because it's a new one. It's just like before, it's an entity class. We need to import the Java persistence and Ebean classes validation, and we mark the class as an entity and also extend model. That's the same as before. We have to identify the primary key and other constraints. So our properties name, category, and also this is where it differs from before. We have a one-to-many list of products. We have this list of products which is marked as one-to-many, so that when Ebean loads up this entity, it can create that relationship in the database, create two tables with a relationship. We have the constructors as before. This time the constructor will take a list of products, and we also have a getter and setter for products, which works with the list of products. So we're going to return a list of products if we get products. That's the list of products associated with this category, or we can also set that list. I'll come back to the map options later on. So that's the one-to-many side of the mapping. So category has many products, one-to-many, and then a list of products. The other side is in the product class, and here we've replaced the string category from before, and it's now a category object. We have a many-to-one relationship, and that many-to-one points back to the category for this product. So for any given product, you can find what category it's in very easily. When you create this, when you start the application for the first time, it will generate, the evolutions will run. It's a little bit different this time. Before we had one table. This time we've got two tables. We have create table category, the one side of the relationship. In the many side, we have the foreign key here. So a category ID field gets inserted into the product table. We don't have that equivalent of the many-to-one mapping from product back to category in the database. That only exists on the Java side, but Ebean looks after that mapping from the database. Next, we'll look at the controller. When we're displaying page here with all the products, we need to retrieve the categories, we need to retrieve the products, and then send them to the view for display. I'll start by looking at the products method in the controller. This time I've modified it so it accepts a parameter. Okay, so that's a category ID, and I'm just going to show you that in roots. So in roots we have products, and we have this default parameter, which is cat of type long, and I'm setting its default value to be equal to 0L, which is the long integer 0. If the product method receives 0 as its parameter, it will show all products. So in here, we're going to show all products. If I select category 1, if you look at the URL here, you'll see it has a parameter afterwards that says cat equals 1. If I select books, we see cat equals 2. This is the way we're going to tell the application to just show products for a particular category. And if I manually change that to 3, you can see it does the same thing as clicking on it over here. If I select all categories, you'll see that there's nothing passed. It's 0. Okay, so that's the default parameter, and in roots that's specified this way. So that's the default 0 if we don't specify any value. So in the home controller again, that's how we pass that value into the method in the controller. We start off an empty list, product list equals new array list, and down here, if cat equals 0, we find all. Otherwise, we get that reference, that cat, and what this is doing is it's getting that category by its ID. So category.find.ref cat, that bit there will go to the category table and retrieve just that category. Now when you retrieve a category object, remember it contains a list of products. So if you take that and then you afterwards call get products, that will return the list of products from that category object. Now that can be a little bit confusing at first, but just think about its definition. Remember, the category has a list of products. It contains a list of products. So that's how we retrieve just the products for a category. But you only do that if you have a value that isn't 0. If cat equals 0, then we retrieve all like before. Also up here, we retrieve our list of categories. And so different type queries, we're calling category.find.query.where.order.by.name.ascending.findList. And the reason it's effectively finding all of the categories, but it's applying an order. So it's a where query using Ebean. And I do that to ensure that the categories are listed alphabetically here. If we didn't do that, if I just did find all, it would default list them by ID. You want it in alphabetical order. Now once we get those, we now have a list of products, either all the products or just the category products, and also a list of categories. And then we send those to the view. If we look at products.scala.html, at the very top, and just like before, whenever you send parameters, you must receive them. So first of all, we have product list, and that's of type list product, so it's a list of products. And we also have a category list, which is list category. And that thing there should be import model. That's a mistake. Import models dot underscore is the Scala or template equivalent here of in Java import models dot asterisk. Pay attention to the links, the comments I have here. They go back to Bootstrap and some other useful documents which explain the code and the layout and so on. Now the page is divided into two sections, two columns. There's a row and we have two columns. The first row is, or first column I should say, is for the categories, which you see in the left hand side here. And I'm placing them into a list group. So that's a Bootstrap list group. And I've text aligned right so that the numbers are all aligned nicely on that side. Okay, so inside that we have a link for each of the categories. The first category is all categories. If you click on all categories, you're going to call the home controller.products with a 0. If cat equals 0, we find all. So that's at the very top of the list. And if we look at the link products, so that's /products, by default it passes a 0. All of the other ones pass a particular ID. We also have a badge beside each of the items in the category list, showing the number of products in each category. 12 for all categories, 1 for audio, 1 for book. And what I'm doing is getting product list.size. So we have a product list up here. For the very first one, we're getting the size of the list, how many items are in that list, and displaying it as a value formatted as a badge. So for each of the other ones, we are creating a link first of all, which passes in the category ID. So roots.homecontroller.products, and then we're going to get category.getID. Remember, this is for each category in the category list. So we get the category, the ID for each category, and that gives us the generates the links. So they look like this, see in the address bar. We also count the number of products in each of the categories. At category.getProducts, remember we're calling the getProducts method in category. There's getProducts. That will retrieve the list of products. Using the size method again, we can find the number of objects in that particular list and display that in the badge so that we know how many products are in each one. And iterate through that, so that's a for loop. And keep doing that over and over until we've displayed all of the categories found in the database, and we calculate the number of products contained in each category. So the name and the number of products, and also, so we have the name, the number of products, and also we're generating a URL to display the products for that category. So calling the products method in the home controller with the ID of the category. And that's the first part. In the other column, we have two columns. We have the first column is for category. Second column down here is just like before for products. And this works the very same way as it did in the previous example. We're just displaying a list of all the products with these same headers. And then, like before, we have a loop here which goes through each of the products and gets its ID, name, category. The category has changed a little. Instead of just get category returning a string, we have to call get category and then .get name. And that's because we now, in the products class, we now have a category object instead of a category string. That particular category has a getter to get its name. So we have to call it product.getCategory.getName, description, and then we have some formatting for the price. We're aligning it right so that the zeros are lined up, or the decimal point is lined up. You'll notice as well, I'll talk about these later on, we have two icons over here for edit and delete. These are just buttons. I put a graphic in from the Font Awesome library, which you can find details of here. I have modified the main template to include the Font Awesome style sheet here at the very bottom. Once that's loaded up, we can access that via CSS. You'll see that I have a button. That's a bootstrap button, and then inside the button I'm putting an icon. If you look up the gallery here, you'll find there's lots of icons. This is for the edit icon, and this one here is for a bin icon for delete. Okay, so it generates those. I'll talk about how to update, delete and add new products in a few minutes. That's everything from the model, and then displaying the categories and products within the view. If I want to add a new product, I can click this button at the bottom and it will open up a form. It's a fairly basic form. I type in my item that I want to add and then add, and you can see it's down the bottom. I can also click on the edit button. It loads up this product again, shows me its existing name. I can just edit that here. I can change the category. You can notice it's showing the current category. It's selecting that from the list. If I right click and inspect, just have a look at what it's doing. It's a select list and it's got a name value pair for each category. So at the very top it says choose category. Then we have the selected one, which is ID 1 audio. Then the other one's value 2 books, 3 computer, and so on. The value is the ID of the category. When I select that, it sends the value back. So if I change that to kitchen and update, you'll see now it's in the kitchen category. If I delete it, it asks me, am I sure? Click OK, and then it says product has been deleted and it's gone from the list. So how to implement that? Well, first of all, you need to display a form. So if I go back and show you what the form looks like again, if I add a new product, the form looks like this. So we need to generate that empty form. When I click the link to add a product, it goes back to the controller. We'll have a look at where that is in the application. So at the very bottom, and the link points to @root homecontroller.product, and it's just a button that says add a product. And that's what you see here, add a product. That matches the that link. If I inspect it so we can have a look, you can see it's a button with a link / add product. So it's routed to add product. So let's have a look at the routing. So if I open up my routes file to add product, there it is. So display the add product page. So when I get add product, I go to controllers.homecontroller.addProduct. So let's have a look at the add product method. It needs a form factory object, which must be injected into the controller. Create a private instance of the form factory, which I'm just calling form factory. Create a constructor for the controller. You can see here it's tagged @inject. Pass form factory into the controller instance. So when it runs, we pass this into the constructor, and we set this.form factory equals F. Down to the add product, we're going to use that form factory instance. So we create a form object and we send it to the view for display. And a form object is always based on a particular class. If we want to add a new product, for example, or edit a product, well then we create a form for the product class. And that's what I'm doing here. So form of type product called add product form is equal to form factory.form, taking the product class and create a form. We can then send that form to the add product view. If I open up add product, so we're accepting at the top that parameter, the form. Next we have importing a helper. The form is built using helpers. So then at form is a helper for creating a form. We start off with the action for a form, which is where it goes when you press the submit button. I'll just show you that in the browser. If I inspect the element and locate the form, action equals add product submit, method equals post, and some other details there. Okay, so that's defining the form. And then inside it we have its input fields. We have this CSRF token, cross-site request forgery prevention. This value is sent by the server to the form, and then when I submit the form it's sent back again, and the server can check that the value sent back matches the value that was sent to the form. And that prevents an attack called cross-site request forgery. We're also using the post method. We'll come back to that in a second, but it's important that there's a distinction between the get and the post method. Inside the form then we have all the fields, and it's standard HTML fields. So we have fields that will have an ID, a name, a value, and then a type like text. Form object then, or the form uses braces to surround all the elements within the form. This is the CSRF value which is inserted into the form. Then we have a hidden field for the product ID. When you create a new product, it doesn't have an ID, and that's generated the first time you save it to the database. But when you're editing a product, it will have an ID. And I want to share the same form for editing and adding new products. So the hidden field will store the ID so that we can send it back to the server and then use that when we're updating. If it's empty, it means that the product doesn't exist yet and it can be created. We have one for name, and inside here we have the label, which is name, and also the CSS class. It's the bootstrap class, a form control. The category list is a little bit more complex. The select list consists of options, name, value, pairs. We have text for the name, and then a value equals 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, each ID for each category. If we're editing a product, it will have an existing selected item. Okay, so there's a selected option beside that. Selected equals selected for a computer, so that we know that one that's based on its current ID. Back in the view, you can see when we're creating this select, we're basing it on the add product form, and we're selecting category.id. So that will get the ID of the category from the object. Each product has a category, and then from the category you can find the ID. Then we have our options, and that's going to be category.options. And this is actually calling a method in the category class which I created. It's this options method here, which returns a map structure of key value pairs. We have two strings, string comma string, so the value comma its name from the category table. I have a for loop here which is iterating through the categories, putting the ID first of all and then the name into the map, and then returning that as a list of options. In the view, this select object here, the select helper I should say, takes that map object and iterates through it, but adds an option for each of the ones in the map. Then we have the stock and price fields, and finally the submit buttons. I have a submit button and a cancel button. The first button is of type submit, which means when you press the submit button, it calls the action, and the action is add product submit. The other one is cancel, and cancel just goes back and shows the products page again, so it calls home controller product 0. That's the first part of the round trip. You select the add product button, goes to routes, displays the form, and then we submit the form and we come back to the controller again. And this time we have add product submit. Now if I look in routes, you'll see it's a little bit different from before. This time it's a post. Remember, we're posting back from the browser. When you use a GET request, everything is in the URL. So that's a GET request. When you use a POST request, data that you fill into the form isn't sent as part of the URL, it's sent as the body of the page. So the body of the page contains all of these values that we want to display. We're posting the data back, and it's going to add product submit. Add product submit is going to try and retrieve the post data from the request. We'll see we're creating a form instance here again, a product form, and we're binding from the request. So the request comes back to the server. The binding process takes each field that's been sent back. We can check if the form has errors. We can create a custom validate method, or else you can use the annotations you included in the class. So this constraint here is required, minimum value 0. And min 0 here again. It will use these constraints when it's validating. If it has errors, we return a bad request and we go back to add product.render new product form. So we display that object, that form object again, and make some changes. I'll just demonstrate that. If I put something like that in there, bad value, and press update, okay, it'll come back and tell me that's invalid. And it will keep doing that until I put something valid in. That's the bad request. If it has errors, return back again. Otherwise, we work out whether this is an update or whether it's a new object. If p.getID is not equal to null, in other words, if the hidden ID field, if I edit a product, somewhere down here you'll see an ID field. There's the hidden field for ID. Okay, so it's type hidden. So it's input ID, name equals ID, value equals 11, and then it's hidden. That refers to the ID for this item. Now, because I clicked on update, it has a hidden value, so I can make a change and it will go back to the controller and it will see that p.id is not equal to null, so we'll call p.update. If I didn't do that, if I call p.save on an existing product, it would create a copy in the table and I'd see two items. If I add a new product, inspect element in this page, try and find the ID field, we should see that it's empty. Okay, there's the ID field and value equals blank. This time when I submit the form, it'll go back to the server and it will see that p.id is null. Instead of trying to update, it will save the product. So it'll call p.save, which will add a new product to the database. Next, I'm setting a flash message, which sends a little message back to the next page. And I can retrieve that message in the products view. At the very top, we have an if statement. If flash contains success, well then flash.get the success message. Once we've finished, we redirect back to the products page. You'll notice we're calling product 0, which means we want to display all of the items in the page. If we look at the buttons for editing a product, you'll see that we're calling an update product method with product.getID. So we're passing in the specific value that we want to edit into the update product method. In routes, you'll see that update product has its own method here. There we go. Now let's delete. Update product is a get, and we're passing a parameter. So $ID indicates that it's expecting a parameter of ID long. There's no default, unlike up here. It's just ID long. And when I just show you, if I go back to the products page, if I inspect one of these, we can see we have here update product /1. So when I click on that link, it matches update product /1. We're passing, that's a way of passing a parameter back to the controller. So it calls update product. Update product accepts that parameter, long ID. I want to make sure it exists. If somebody calls a product that doesn't exist, we get an exception. You can see that the update product method in the controller accepts a parameter, long ID, and it uses this to find the particular product ID for update. We attempt to find the product by ID by creating first of all a new product, edit product. We then check to see if anything has been returned. So for example, if I try to edit a product with a value that doesn't exist, we don't want that to cause an exception. Instead, I just want to show an error message. Now you can make this better, but just a simple example. So if enter product equals null, in other words, if it can't find that product by ID, well then return bad request and just show an error. Otherwise, we continue on to the next stage. We create a form object like before. We fill the form. This time we create a new form object of type class, but we fill it using the edit product. Send it back to the add product page, and that's where you get this. So it takes the existing product, fills out the values you can see here, and then displays them for editing. The final feature I want to look at is delete. If I right click and inspect, you'll see that each of those has href, del product, / whatever the ID is. And if you do the same for any of the other ones, you'll see something similar. We have an on click, some JavaScript, which is what we call to confirm the delete. That will return confirm delete. If it returns true, then we proceed to delete. If it returns false, then we cancel the operation. And you will find that JavaScript it's linked into the page, into the main template. At the very bottom, you'll see a link to script.js. Script.js contains this confirm delete JavaScript function, which simply returns return confirm, are you sure? That will pop up a confirmation box on the screen where you select yes or no, and it returns true or false. So if you select yes, it returns true. Select no, it returns false. The application can then use that to determine whether it calls delete or not. It's fairly simple, but it looks good. And it means you get an opportunity to back out of a delete in case you change your mind, or you press the button before you realize what you're doing. I'm going to press the button. That's asking me, am I sure? Click OK, and it refreshes the page. In the background, it went to the controller. It looked for delete product. It passes in the parameter. So we find product.find ref id.delete. I didn't do a check to make sure this actually exists, so it could throw an exception. It should really do that. So calls delete, and then we flash success, product has been deleted, and redirect home. That refresh ensures that after the product is deleted, the page is reloaded to show the new updated page without that product. That, I think, is all of the features. Have a look at the comments and also the links to external documents